Okay. Good afternoon. I am going to call to order the Nashville MTA Board meeting and welcome everyone here on this toasty Thursday afternoon. It is toasty. So first, before I even do roll call, I just want to welcome our new board member, Catherine Sasser. Welcome to the MTA Board. We are happy to have you, and I tell you, you're in for an amazing ride. For real, right. Yes, but you are, and I enjoy this board, and it is certainly a board of colleagues. So thank you for being here, and welcome aboard. So I'm going to do a roll call. Jessica Dalton.
Present.
Catherine Sasser.
Present.
Walter Searcy. Gail Carl Williams, Janet Miller.
Present.
All present board members. First on our agenda is the approval of both the May 25th, 2023 and June 22nd, 2023 MTA board minutes. If I could have a motion for approval of both.
I move to approve both.
Thank you. Is there any second?
Second.
Are there any comments, questions? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Jessica Dalton, what's your vote?
To adopt? Yes.
Yes. Catherine Sasser, your vote?
Yes.
Walter Searcy, your vote? Gail Carl Williams, yes. And Janet Miller, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm just answering for you. This is a new.
I love it when you speak for me.
I told you we were colleagues
You're
here.
so wise. So, yes, Janet Miller speaks for herself and says yes. Thank you.
Okay, that went well. Next on our agenda, our public comment section, and just want to remind everyone with our public comments that we have 3 minutes to speak, and also be reminded that we hold the same ability to have civil discourse, but courteous as we do this as well. So I appreciate the public comment. And so I have my first public comment, Ann Pope. I think Monica's going to support Ms. Pope right here.
Yes. My coming, this will be my last meeting that I'll be coming to because I'm starting law school on August 24th.
Excuse me one second. Can you move her over just so we can't see? We want to see her.
Okay. I will be going to law school on August the 21st to December the 9th. My comment is I had to stop riding the Access Ride bus. I am Catholic. And I don't know if anybody in here is Catholic. The church doesn't last any long. So they would take me. I live in West Nashville in Bellmead area. And the bus driver, one time the bus driver came and picked me up. And I was like, yay, you're here at 9:30. But what happened? They gets on the expressway and I'm like, where are you going? He said, I'm going to pick up somebody. So it was a 30-minute ride out there and another 30-minute ride coming. I'm like, what the area of Nashville, because I don't know it that much. I haven't even been downtown. And so anyway, they told East Nashville. And when he finally took me to church is almost over with. So I had to give up the Access Ride bus. Now I ride the big bus. And the church is on West End. That's the bishop's seat. And so what happened was the big bus, the lady with the she said she was going to be here today, bus driver, but she's not. She's very nice. And she's coming to White Bridge in Charlotte at 9:37. And she get to me 15 minutes till, but she get me to my front door at the church at 10 minutes to 10 so I can have my prayer time. But the other lady did ride the 3B, but she was driving the 3A this past Sunday. And she, twice on Easter Sunday, she tore my dress up. Because she out in the street because the restaurant parks in front of, the people parking in front of the Italian restaurant across from the church. So I went down to 21st Street. And so that Sunday, she's out in the street, and I'm like, my chair won't go up on your ramp. She said, well, I can't get in. I want to know if the bus driver, if the cars are parked there. But that's what they do. I asked them, the people, because it's a Mexican restaurant almost at the end of 21st Street. So she said, I cannot get in the parking. I cannot get in the crosswalk and get you on here. So my wheels are spinning, and she's looking at me. I'm like, are you going to leave me? And she just standing there looking at me. Finally, she asked one of the passengers to push me onto the bus. But see, my chair is spinning when you out there. I got that big hump, and my chair cannot get onto the bus like that. So she just refused, and that was bus number 2180. So I did file a complaint, but I have gotten thousands of apologies back and 2 SS ride, and they still do the same thing. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Our next public comment is from Darius Knight.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My public comment today is going to be one. Today was an announcement of Route 70. Congratulations on your, I guess it's a connector, for the kids that will be going to James Lawson. I'm just going to ask you all to make sure that you put this route out there, do as much communication about this route as possible. It was nice of council to make sure that you all had the funding for this. As many of the customers during the process of the public meetings that were held, I kept hearing the issue, well, how were their kids supposed to get to the school on an Uber or Lyft? And I actually did identify with that issue. So I'm glad that this Route 70 was created. The other issue that I'm going to keep bringing up is there is a issue in quality and control. I have got on your customer director nerves, Ms. Zeta Riggs, for the last several months, where she has stepped in multiple times asking him to reach out. Your Steve's assistant has reached out to him multiple times as well. So I'm going to say this. There are other customers having issues getting responses. The customer service team clearly gets what customer service is, and they go out of their way to make sure that any issues that they get are addressed, even if they have to go to their director. So again, I'm going to say thank you to Zeta Riggs and her management staff. The other issue that I want to address is our buses. And I know that you all don't have any issue because y'all don't manufacture the bus. But New Flyer and Gillig, not so much Gillig, but the New Flyer 60-foot buses, there are still some weird, awkward issues there with doors, lights. There are issues where the operators are not reporting it to you all, and if I'm out, I'm having to report it myself. The Gillig buses, on the other hand, there is a transmission issue, which it was an issue with the the 2020 Gillig buses that came in, where if the operator's driving, it jerks you. When they brake, it jerks you. Now, I've reached out to the staff about this multiple times so that you all don't have any litigation or lawsuits by someone getting hurt. I'm just going to ask that you all stay on Void to make sure that y'all get that second software update, because y'all don't need any lawsuits. And I just want to make that clear. The other thing that I want to bring to this board is, again, I'm going to ask you all to please take the time to, in your busy schedules, to deal with the customers and reach out to your operators. Thank you.
Those are all the public comments I have in front of me. Is there anyone else that wishes to make a public comment? Thank you. If you could state your name, and I
Yeah.
don't know if you were in the room when I indicated that you have 3 minutes and a decorum that we asked for. So, okay.
I'll be short. Jeremiah Wooten. I live out in Antioch near the Global Mall. I just want to say I was really excited to see the new Route 70 that Darius mentioned today. I'm a little disappointed to see it's launching August 4th because I'm a middle school math teacher and have to go to a professional development at Lawson High School on the 3rd. So it would be really awesome for the hundreds of math teachers across the city to be able to ride the bus there, especially now that We Go Ride is included for all MNPS teachers and staff. So I'd love if that started one day earlier. The second piece, just looking at that route and seeing that it travels across Old Hickory Boulevard made me think of a different stretch of Old Hickory Boulevard between Nolensville Pike and Murfreesboro Road, right? Old Hickory Boulevard that turns into Bell Road, and thinking about how that corridor to similarly connect two end of routes, but to much higher ridership routes. It would be awesome to bring back the connection as there's 5,000 apartments along that stretch and thousands more coming online this year. So it would be really awesome to bring back that connector to connect end of line routes, just like we're doing with the Route 50 and 3B out in Bellevue. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? And if you could fill out a card for the staff in the back, that would be great for our records. Are there any other requests for public comments? Seeing none, hearing none, that will close the public comment section of our agenda today. And let's move on. So we have 4 information-only items, and I would ask board members, or do any of those items, would anyone like anything pulled out to have further discussion about? If not, as always, I would ask you to make certain you take the time and read those items carefully. And if you have questions, please reach out to Steve or the appropriate staff for those items. Today, we do not have anything. We have no consent agenda items, so we won't have to go through that. And so we have a little bit of a change today, and changing of the guards, if you will. So I have asked Jessica to become the chair of Operations and Finance Committee. Mr. Searcher, you've been amazing, but you know that, right? So thank you so much for your service. I appreciate that. Jessica, I will hand it over to you for the Operations and Finance Committee.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I certainly have big shoes to fill. Thank you, Walter, for your service. So it takes good leadership, right? So I call the meeting of the Operations and Finance Committee to order. The committee has 2 action items for consideration to bring to the full board. The first action item is MA 23018 on page 25 of the board book. It is on the auto damage / catastrophic insurance renewal. I would ask that the CFO, Ed Oliphant, come and give us a good summary and background, and then explain the staff recommendation to us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. Last month, as you know, the board approved our general liability insurance with Chubb, which is a traditional renewal that you all have seen. But what we are looking at today on page 25 of the board pack is actually something new that has not occurred with the board. Over the last several years, the auto damage insurance industry has changed. Historically, we have seen premiums that are under $300,000 annually, which obviously would mean it would not come before the board due to that threshold not being met. The reasons for the lower premiums comes from the fact that we have historically utilized a type of insurance called an inland marine policy, which carries much lower premiums than the traditional auto damage catastrophic. However, the insurance industry has incurred a lot of large claims over the last 3 to 5 years, to the point that not only was our carrier, who we've had for a long time, not willing to renew the policy, but also for the industry as a whole, it has shifted to no one carrier being willing to accept the entire risk of any policies that they issue. So they've moved to a layered structure, if you will, where multiple carriers share the risk across the claims. This policy being proposed in front of you has 9 carriers, if you can believe it, 9 carriers sharing the risk for all of our locations, and will cover claims up to about approximately $50 million, with our total fleet value of our buses and our access ride vans being about $75 million. The new proposal the actual premium is increasing to $1,011,256. Now, while we're exposed for an additional $25 million difference, this is catastrophic coverage, which only really comes into play when an event such as a tornado, a flood, could result in significant damage to our fleet. However, the event of this magnitude would likely result in an outside agency such as FEMA would come in to assist in coverage of that, as long as we prove that we made a good faith effort to secure our insurance coverage. Now, there's only 2 people at the table that will remember, but in 2010, we had a 1,000-year flood, and this is a really good example of where FEMA came in, and actually we lost quite a bit of vehicles, but a minimum amount was coming from our insurance. Basically, it was covered by FEMA, and actually FTA actually assisted us as well. So based on that, we do believe that the additional exposure is manageable. While this is a significant increase to the overall auto damage policy, I do want to remind you that last month you did approve the liability with a significant savings. So overall, the impact to the insurance budget, if you will, from a budgetary standpoint, there's minimal impact. The 2 policies basically wash themselves out as far as an expense category. So based on that, the staff is requesting that the board approve the auto damage catastrophic insurance policy for a policy value of $1,011,256 for a period of July 1 of 23 to June of 24. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Ed. Do any members of the board have questions?
This is just pure curiosity. How in the world does our general liability go down so significantly and this goes up? I mean, how in the world? Is that just what's going on in the world, Ed?
Wow.
I'm talking to you, Ed.
Yes, I know.
It's just bizarre.
It is. I've asked that question of our brokers. Gallagher, as you know, the board approved to be our new brokers this year. They were able to find the general liability avenues to get a lower policy value, premium value for the liability. Whereas the inland marine, we've been very thankful to our previous carrier. They've been willing to grandfather that type of policy. When they saw it, when the renewal process, they said, there's no way this is going to happen.
Not doing it.
They just don't do it. But Nationwide had been willing to do it, but until all these losses started occurring, they just could not do it anymore. So we had to switch back to traditional.
It was a convenient $775,000 offset by an $800,000. So I think that's great work.
I try hard.
Thank you. It's just pure curiosity.
Janet, at the end of the day, the insurance companies make their money one way or the other.
Yes, they do.
Absolutely. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Ed.
Sure.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ed about the auto insurance renewal? Great. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
That was a great summary. So the Operations and Finance Committee has considered this action item and passes it back to the full board for approval.
I would ask, is there a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
And can I have a second?
Second.
Your first second. Exciting.
Ooh, coming out the gate. Any further discussion?
I do have a question, and I'm sorry, Ed, but it says for the period July 1, 2023.
Correct.
We're at July 27.
Correct. It was bound in anticipation thereof. The reason that it was delayed is due to the fact that the industry changed and they could not get a binding done before the board met. So that's the reason you're considering it. But since it's over the threshold of 300, the right thing to do is to bring it back to the board so that it's a public information and everybody knows, and you were just codifying what has been bound.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
we've covered for the last 3 weeks, if that's your question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we've been good since July 1.
Okay, good.
Sorry, that's what I mean when I say bound. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that clarification.
Any other questions? With that being said, I will call for the vote. Jessica Dolphin, your vote.
Yes.
Catherine Sasser, your vote.
Yes.
Walter Searcy, your vote. Gil Carr Williams, yes. And Janet Miller.
Yes.
And an answer for
Yes, please. Yes, please, Madam Chair.
you. Thank you very much. The motion carries. We have auto damage catastrophic insurance renewal at a new cost.
Okay. Thank you. So next up for the committee is Nick Oldham, WEGO's Chief Safety and Security Officer. He will be summarizing and giving us background and the staff recommendation for action item M-A-23-019 on page 26 of the board packet. It is it's recommended memorandum of understanding between the MTA and the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department. The stage is yours, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dolphin. Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to present, and welcome again, Board Member Sasser. So as you all know, the Elizabeth Duff Transit Center at WEGO Central is really crucial, a crucial transportation hub for us. To put that into perspective, consider this. We handle about 2,200 bus movements per day at Elizabeth Duff. And we serve almost 15,000 customers every day at Elizabeth Duff. That's a lot of movement and a lot of people. So quite naturally, our focal point has always been security. With that in mind comes the collaboration, not only that we have with our contracted security firm, but also our collaboration with Metro Nashville Police Department. So in 2017, Davidson Transit Organization entered into a contract with MNPD to provide added security through their secondary employment unit. And this unit essentially are officers that work on a volunteer basis, but they do it overtime at a flat fixed rate. So the beauty of it is that those officers are acting in the capacity of a Metro police officer with full access to the resources of the department. The not so beautiful part is that as WEGO and every other industry across the country has experienced staffing shortages, so did MNPD. And that dramatically reduced the availability of those officers, and consequently, it limited our access to the pool of officers that are eligible to work within that secondary employment unit. So as we began to discuss renewing our partnership with MNPD this year, we landed at a recommendation to change from a contract with DTO to a memorandum of understanding between MNPD and MTA because we're peer public agencies. While it will increase the amount that we pay for their services, we really firmly and strongly believe that changing to an MOU, and not just us, we believe it, but also MNPD strongly believes that changing to an MOU will increase the coverage that we have at the Elizabeth Duff Transit Center. Here's why, really quickly. So under the contract, the officers get a flat fee. So essentially, an officer that's been on the force for 15 years gets the same flat fee as an officer that's been on the force for 15 months. That's not very attractive to the officers that have been on the force for 15 years. So under the MOU, their overtime pay counts toward their salary, and that counts toward their pension. So that makes it much, much, much more attractive for officers to sign up, because remember, it's voluntary. It makes it more attractive for them to sign up, especially for those seasoned officers. So staff requests that the board give the chief executive officer the authority to enter into an MOU with MNPD's secondary employment unit, not only to provide officers, but their patrol cars as well, focused primarily at the Elizabeth Duff Transit Center at WEGO Central, but they'll also be available to move throughout the transit system as needed. So that's my request, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that summary. And are there any questions from the board?
I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, I assume this is going to have some sort of fiscal impact. So have we do we have the funds to cover the increased rate? And my second question, with the labor market being as tight as it is, what happens if we can't attract officers at the overtime rate? Do we have a plan C?
Absolutely. So yes, thank you. To your first question, yes. So we believe that it's not going to require any new financing because the money that we've saved from the officers that haven't been there. So we haven't paid out as much as we've paid historically because of the reduction of those officers. So we don't believe that we'll have to spend new money. So I think we're fiscally good there. And to your second question, one of the options that we do have is we're coming up on renewing our contract with Allied, with our security firm. So we can kind of balance the staffing at that level if we don't get as many officers.
Great. I think it's really, really important. Just want to be sure we are covered. So thank you.
And we
Absolutely.
did have the access to the costing information when Ed's group was putting the budget together. So it's
Great. Thank you.
contemplated there.
Great. Any further questions for Nick on the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department MOU?
Well, I just appreciate the insightfulness and being able to make certain that our officers are certainly adequately compensated for the work that they're doing to keep everyone safe. So thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. After consideration, the Operations and Finance Committee recommends action item M-A.23-019 to the board.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion for approval.
So I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Seconds. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further comments, discussion, questions? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Jessica Dobbin, your vote.
Yes.
Catherine Sasser, your vote.
Yes.
Walter Searcy, your vote. Gail Carr Williams, yes. Janet Miller.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. So as I am closing out the Operations and Finance Committee, I want to remind everyone to check out the procurement list for WeGo. And then with that, Madam Chair, I conclude the business of the Operations and Finance Committee.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Dobbin. And let me just say that was a great first chair. Awesome. Very fair, but it was well done. So thank you very much. Ms. Miller, I'll turn nice over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee, we've got two line items that we need to vote on today. The first is for the 2024 operating budget. And as Ed comes to the podium, I'll remind the board and everybody in attendance, this is essentially the budget that we've been talking about and that we normally would have voted on at the last meeting. We had the very happy situation where Metro Council and the Mayor's Office provided more money than we asked for, which is a happy thing that we hope is a regular thing. So rather than approving the budget and having to come back and amend it, we just delayed a month. So with that kind of frames up the conversation, and I'll hand it over to you, Ed.
Okay. Well, any questions? No. Okay.
Did I steal your thunder? I'm sorry.
No, not at all. That was perfect. On pages 27 through 32 of the board pack is the consideration for the 24 budget. And I'm going to give a little bit of a summary for our new board member, just to have some perspective. The initial budget submission to Metro back in February included an increase in our baseline budget from 23, as well as an investment request of an additional $5.4 million for a partial Better Bus service expansion based on the mayor's transportation plan approved in 2020. Ultimately, the mayor's recommended budget included our requested increase for baseline, but only included about half the requested Better Bus investment. Metro Council, however, as our chair lady just explained to us, Metro Council ended up approving a substitute budget that not only fully reinstated the Better Bus investment request, but also an additional $380,000 for extended service to the new James Lawson High School that was brought up just a minute ago, out to Bellevue, that opens next month. Since the substitute, I'm just repeating, since the substitute budget was still in play, we waited to have the board approve it this month. very appropriate for what I'm about to explain. So the proposed budget you're considering has a 12.6% increase over fiscal year 2023 to a budget of $120.6 million compared to $107 last year. It also includes a Metro subsidy increase to WEGO from $61.6 million to $74.7 million. Funding of the baseline budget allows us not only to keep our existing service in place, but also maintain our current fare structure. It also funds the balance of a partial year of service that was implemented during during fiscal year 23, and also accounts for a lot of inflationary increases that we've all been experiencing. It also includes funding for the opening of the Ernest Rip Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center that's scheduled to open in spring of 24, and also for expanded maintenance capacity for our growing shelter and bus stop program. The $5.4 million in Better Bus improvements allows us to continue implementing service included in the Mayor's Transportation Plan that I just mentioned, which will primarily focus for this year in the spring of 2024 surrounding the opening of the North Nashville Transit Center. Felix Castrodad is getting ready to come up with the next agenda item, addressing the fall service changes, focusing on the implementation of the full year of service started last year, plus the services that were not able to be implemented due to the workforce availability issues we were experiencing and the new replacement vehicle delivery schedule due to supply chain crisis that we were also experiencing. So on pages 28 and 29, the action item gives you some additional detailed explanations that, trust me, I will not go into line-by-line explanations for, but I'll be glad to answer any questions if so asked. One item that I do think is worth noting, in the fiscal year 24 budget, we will be reverting back to the utilization of our federal 5307 capital funding revenue being once again needed for the allowable preventive maintenance and ADA expenditures. As you know, for the past 2 years, the board, with board approval, we've been using the American Rescue Plan federal relief dollars for preventive maintenance and ADA for 2 reasons. One, we wanted to ensure that the funding was programmed and used before there was any inclination from Congress to pull back any of that money. And also, it opened up precious capital dollars to be used for other capital projects of high priority on our approved capital plan. So I wanted to be brief. I think you have seen a lot of it already and know what it includes. So unless there's any questions, we're requesting the board to approve the proposed operating budget as presented here.
Great, thank you, Ed. Questions for Ed? My only question is, are the rescue plan dollars, are they gone?
They are, for all intents and purposes, gone, yes. There's maybe about $40,000 that will flow into 24, which we've included in usage for other increases in expenses, whatever, to balance the budget. But yes, it is gone.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Again,
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you for doing a great job at keeping us budgeted, right? And keeping things, because we've seen a lot of additions and upgrades over the past 2 years. So I think it's been really clever and forward thinking about moving forward on the Better Bus Network and implementing that. So thank you for that, all that work.
Great. Any other comments?
I would
Gail?
just echo that you were ready for council to be able to approve all those changes for us that are good. So thank you for being ready.
Thank you, Metro Council.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Mayor Cooper has been very supportive
Yes.
of transit, so we're really grateful to him. It'll be super interesting when it comes to budgeting time for the upcoming year with a new mayor. So I'm sure we will all have great discussions about that because we're hearing a lot of campaign promises, which are great. So, okay, with that, thank you so much, Ed. And with that, the NICE committee would make a motion to the board that we recommend the board that the board adopt the fiscal year 2024 budget as presented.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any further comments, discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Jessica Dolphin?
Yes.
Catherine Sasser?
Yes.
Walter Searcy? Gil Carr-Williams, yes. And Janet Miller?
Yes.
With that being said, we have a budget. Woo! Congratulations.
That's always
Awesome.
that's always a happy
It
vote to
always
get
is.
that behind
I
us.
know.
So Great. And so now we have the second part of the story, which is Felix Castrodad, who is our Director of Planning and Grants, is going to present the proposed fall 2023 service changes and then also the Title VI analysis that goes along with those service changes. And hopefully they're good news because we got more money, right? So take it away, Felix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So good afternoon. I know you're ready for some slides finally. So that's why I'm here. Good afternoon. Thanks.
We were all sitting here going, where are the slides? Where are the slides?
I know. That's why they always put me last. Welcome, Catherine. It's an honor to have you. And just for your own benefit, we do system changes twice a year, typically in the spring and the fall. It gives us an opportunity to reassess how the system is working, what things may need change. If we have additional money or whatever it is, changes with the budget, gives us an opportunity to look at implementing service, hopefully not to take service away, but sometimes just to see how we can better arrange things to reflect what is happening on the street with routes and delays and things of that nature. So that's why we're here today. I'll be presenting the proposed changes for fall 2023. That's page 33, I believe, on your packets. So I'll just start by mentioning that a lot of these changes are related to our Better Bus plan, and it's an effort, a 5-year plan to improve the bus service, and we've been working on it. So we wanted, as Ed mentioned, we wanted to do a lot of these changes back in the spring, but we were challenged with a couple of different things, including the supply chain disruptions, including the workforce availability. We've come to a better place right now, so we're in a position to move some of that. Those are still challenges, but we have some additional equipment. We are making some strides with operators, hiring and retention, but we continue to work on that because it's not over, and it's a constant reminder that we need to have that under control and improve if we want to continue to expand service in the future. This is just a slide showing you it's a summary of all the changes. As you can see, there's a lot of routes involved here. So we're doing a lot of improvements. It's new service for the most part. So that's exciting news. Following on the focus of Better Bus, we are improving the hours of operation. We are adding frequency to some routes. We are expanding our coverage with the WIGO link zones and some schedule improvements to improve reliability and some minor route modifications. We have 2 minor route modifications. I won't spend a lot of time on these. Route 29 Jefferson, we have a minor route change around the TSU area where the bus turns around, mainly related to a lot, especially when school is in session, there's a lot of cars parked on Alameda Street, both sides of the street, all the way to the intersection when the bus goes to turn. It's a problem. So we're just making the turn on the block before and going around. We're not missing any stops, maybe some minor changes to the schedule. The second change is related to Route 84. This is an RTA route that operates regional service between Nashville and Murfreesboro. It's operated by MTA. Typically, the bus just stays on the interstate going to downtown. We're proposing a change that it gets off at Murfreesboro Pike and Spence Lane, just to give an opportunity for anybody that wants to transfer to Route 55, Murfreesboro Pike, or maybe 75 Midtown, or even the 18 airport, be able to do that without having to get to downtown necessarily. Those are minor changes. Now, getting now into the Better Bus stuff, we are proposing some span of service improvements for our frequent network routes that you can see there on the red block. We are proposing to expand the hours of operation until 1:15 in the morning for weekdays and Saturdays. Right now, we are ending service at 12:15, so it's another hour of service. This is one of the main things that we keep hearing, especially with people that work events or different jobs at downtown. For our local routes, 6, Lebanon Pike, and 42, St. Cecilia, Cumberland, we're expanding the hours until 11:15, 7 days a week. Those typically end at 9:15 or so. And then expanding the WIGO Access, our paratransit service hours to match those of the fixed route service. In terms of frequency, there's 2 routes that we're proposing to improve the frequency. Route 7 operates on Hillsborough Pike. We have, during midday, the route, instead of every 15 minutes, it's every 20 minutes. So we want to bring that consistency of every 15 minutes along the day. and that will move this route into the frequent route category because it's every 15 minutes or better throughout the day. And then Route 8, 8th Avenue South, we're proposing to improve that to every 30 minutes during midday weekdays, every 30 Saturdays, and every 40 minutes on Sundays. Same thing with frequency, but with our crosstown routes. Route 75, Midtown, we're improving them to operate every 45 minutes. Route 75 has a big gap in the middle of the day where it doesn't operate. It's hard to use it consistently because of that. So we want to make sure that it has that consistency of operation every 45 minutes throughout the day, and adding Sunday service. This route doesn't operate on Sundays. Same thing with Route 77, Thompson, Wedgwood. We are adding hourly service on Saturdays, I believe it's about every 75 minutes or so. And then adding Sunday service to this route, which doesn't operate on Sundays. So making those crosstown routes more accessible and better for people that want to transfer to be able to use them. And then the bulk of the rest of the changes are related to our Wiggle Link program. As you know, this is a partnership that we do with Uber and Mobility Solutions. It's a first last mile mobility on demand service. We have 7 routes that we have implemented already. Antioch, Hermitage, Goodlettsville, South Nashville, Bellevue, Cockrell Bend, and Sylvan Park. And the object with this is to provide additional service where we don't have coverage, so people can have a connection to our fixed route service. So to that effect, we are proposing to add 5 new zones, and you see the list of them here. The ones in gray are the ones that already exist. The ones in purple are the new ones that we are proposing to start this fall. Just a quick summary of each of them. Brickchurch Pike, this is a location where we have some level of service, but there's some big employment centers here, specifically FedEx, UPS, that we receive constant requests for service. So this is an opportunity to start some kind of an opportunity for accessibility there. There will be 2 connecting zones, Dickerson Walmart, so a connection to our Route 23, which is frequent service, and Route 79 Skyline, which is a connector route connecting Dickerson and the Madison area. And there's another one further south to Dickerson Pike and Ewing Drive for Route 23 Dickerson Pike. The next zone, Skyline, which I just noted looks like a deer. You have Robert Johnson to thank for that. So I guess some of his art skills are showing. So in the Skyline zone, there's a connection to the Dickerson Walmart as well, Route 23 and Route 79 Skyline. This was interesting because during the public meetings, we heard from a person that used to live in Antioch and used the Wiggle Link and had now moved to Old Hickory up north. And when we first drew the zone, it didn't include that. And he asked if we can change it so he can cover his new location, his new house, and we did. So he was very grateful about that because now he has a connection there. Next zone, Burton Hills. This is south of Green Hills. There's some multi-family facilities and some businesses as well, and senior living. So we've received requests for quite some time now to extend Route 7. There's nothing that we can do at this time about that, but we decided to move forward with a Wiggle Link zone as providing that connectivity. And this will be a connection to our Hillsborough Transit Center for Route 7 and Route 1712 South. Councilmember Henderson gave us some suggestions, so we expanded this zone to be able to respond to her request to be able to add some schools and some other generators in this area. And the last, Old Hickory zone, sorry. So this was a challenging zone because if you've been to Old Hickory, you know this is a hard place to get even if you're driving. So we don't have any service there currently. The service that we had before was limited service, so it wasn't really widely used. But we know there's a desire as this is an area that continues to grow. So we have 2 connections, one to Route 56 or Madison Station, which covers routes 56, Route 76 and 79. So 2 or a frequent route, a connector route, and a crosstown. And then another one on the south side to Lebanon Pike. Because of this zone, most of the people can still pay the $2 that it's covered under the subsidy. But unless you're in a very extreme part of the zone and you want to travel to the other end, it may be a little bit over the $2. So it could be not, $2 or $3 or two something or three something dollars, but it's not a huge amount. But it's a first effort, and we'll see how it works, and we'll monitor it and see how we see people using it. And the last zone is the Rose Bank. This is in East Nashville. We used to cover a lot of this area with former Route 20, Scott, that was eliminated many years ago. We know that there's people here that still would like to ride, and so from some points it's still a bit of a walk. So we provided connections to Route 56 and Route 4 Shelby for the Rose Bank area as well. We conducted the public outreach period from June 26th to the 17th of July. We had 3 public meetings, 1 in person, 2 virtual meetings. Overall, we always get comments about everything in the surveys, but as far as the comment for the proposed service changes go, there was mostly support for them. And there's a write-up on your packet about all the specific comments, even related to specific routes, and everything that was not for the proposed changes. So you can look at that in more detail if you have questions. As with anything that we do, we always have to do a Title VI equity analysis to make sure that none of the changes that we're proposing are going to be disproportionate or going to disparately impact Title VI populations. With anything, we have a 20% threshold. So any changes that we do, if they go above the 20% threshold, impacting those populations, then there's a disparate impact. So we have to look and see if there's anything, mitigation strategies that we have to do. In the case of the additional service and the span of operations, none of that exceeds the 20% threshold. But we also did a separate analysis for the WIGO link zones to make sure that that's the case with each of those as well. And in those cases, again, the impacts are actually in the positive side for those populations. So we found no disparate impact or disproportionate burden on those minority and low-income populations. So that's my last slide. And with that, the recommendation from the staff is for the board to approve the fall 2023 service changes as proposed, and they will go into effect on October 1st, 2023.
Great. Thank you, Felix. Questions, comments?
One question. So what changes were most requested but wasn't able to be created?
I think for most of the routes, people would like to see them. So the majority of the routes operate, or the frequent routes, we are expanding the span of operation. People would like to see that across the board for all routes. Those are the frequent routes carry over 70% of our ridership, so there's a major benefit to the majority of people. So I think there's always people that would like to see more of that happening to the local routes. Mm-hmm. As you see, we are doing that with 2 of them this time, with the 6 and the 42. So that's one of the things that we hear a lot. A lot of people also would like to see more frequency on the routes. I think, so these changes, as I said, these are focusing on the fall. When we move to the spring, a lot of the changes are going to be focusing on the opening of the North Nashville Transit Center. And we're doing current surveys to some of those routes to understand how people would like those to operate, how they're going to interact with the new. So that's a lot of the comments that we're hearing, especially as we do surveys on those routes. Katie, I don't know if you have anything else that you've heard that I'm missing. All right. So yeah, but frequency and span are definitely on people's first request when we talk about it, and when we talk about them about service.
Other comments, questions? I want to say Gail and Steve and I were seated together at one of the mayoral forums recently, and a candidate said, I think we need to figure out where the riders are and then put buses near where the riders are. And we all kind of cackled and thought, if they had any idea the level of sophistication and the quality of the work that this team does, because you all know it inside and out. And it's from your software and your analysis, but also in talking every day. So I just want to thank you because the level of sophistication is great. And it's so much more fun to be adding service than cutting service. So,
Absolutely.
and I would like a bunny rabbit shaped zone in the next service change. If anybody would like to request an animal shape on the next service change,
We'll see what we can do.
we'll take
Just
it
in
under
time for Easter.
consideration.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions,
Or
comments?
maybe a caterpillar because it's got so many legs. It can get us
Caterpillar,
there faster
yeah.
or something. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, Jessica.
I just want to echo what you said, Chair Miller, about it's really great to be adding service and updating and upgrading services in terms of frequency, but also operating until 1:15 in the morning. That's going to be potentially a game changer for some of our shift workers, and that's going to be excellent. I love expanding the WeGo link zones. I am curious about how you select those zones.
Well, we do what we call some transit propensity analysis. So we look at areas where you can look for low-income populations, minority populations, low car ownership, and at the same time, certain levels of density. So where you have some apartment buildings or places like that, you know that there's more of a group of people that would ride. So that helps us. I mean, we have pretty good coverage overall, but there's certain areas that are lower density, but you have pockets like that can benefit from having access. And then, you know, the majority of those areas don't have sidewalks, or it's difficult to get to a bus stop that is far away. So those are some of the factors that we use when we are looking at selecting some of those zones.
Brilliant. To your point about them knowing this information inside and out. Thank you so much.
The only other thing I'd add to the WeGo link zones is you'll see they tend to be consistently sized because it's sort of a reachable area, you know, within a reasonable time and expense in the Uber model.
I feel like at some point, if you add just a handful more zones, the whole county will be a WeGo link zone.
Right,
That's
which is
the goal.
great. Yeah.
And
Any other
ideally, you like
questions?
to connect them to frequent routes, so it's kind of a nice, easy connection.
Okay. Well, if there's no other questions or sorry about that. The NICE committee would like to bring a motion to the full board to approve the proposed fall 2023 service changes as documented in this presentation, with the implementation to take effect October 1st, 2023. So with that, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments, questions, conversation? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Ms. Darville?
Yes.
Sasser?
Yes.
Mr. Searcy? No voting. Maybe if it was another animal. Carl Williams, yes. Chattabilla.
Yes.
We have a motion for changes. How exciting. Yeah,
Right.
money and
Thank
changes.
you.
This is
Thank
amazing.
you, everybody, for your
Yes.
work on that. So with that, Madam Chair, I will hand it back to you. That concludes the new Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee session.
Well, thank you, Ms. Miller. A lot in that report, helping to move us forward. So thank you. Next, Mr. Bland, your CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before our folks in the back who spoke to it earlier get concerned that the Route 70 Bellevue connector wasn't mentioned, because that was the last minute budget add, similar to our operating budget. We just didn't have the time to get it through our typical public comment, planning, Title VI analysis. So we're installing that as a pilot service, which we're allowed to do under FTA rules. Between now and the spring service changes, we'll do all of what you just saw Felix present in typical fashion for that Route 70, and it will be recommended as part of the permanent spring 2024 service changes. So I didn't want folks who had already spoken to it to be, wait a minute, did you forget about it? So it's definitely up to be starting actually in advance of the fall changes. Several months ago, you heard a briefing from staff from Dan and Marilyn and KFH on the Access Improvement Study, and we mentioned that we'd be going into public engagement on that. That's pretty well wrapped up. So we do expect to have a final report out and recommendations for policy changes and improvements to the access program coming back to the board in the next month or two. Mentioned earlier, work is also continuing at a good pace on the Ernest Rip Patton Jr. North Nashville Transit Center. I want to thank Kia and the construction team for dragging me through the mud, literally. A week or so ago, the day after we had pouring rain, took me about 20 minutes to clean my boots. But impressive progress is being made. The structural steel is up, the masonry walls are being formed, and the canopies on the outlying bus bays are being constructed as well. So you really can start to see the scale and the layout of the center. I want to thank most of our folks. Gail was there, Walter was there, Jessica was at our recent community meeting up at Urban Housing Solutions Community Room. So appreciate their hosting us with a good turnout of community members to really start getting folks excited about it, getting folks engaged in the ongoing programming of that center and how we can really leverage that asset throughout the rest of the community. This past month, I had the opportunity to attend the summer planning workshop of the board of directors of the Tennessee Public Transportation Association. I serve on their board as vice chair and chair of the legislative committee. Good opportunity to catch up on what's going on around the state, as well as that's the meeting where we kind of plan out our agenda for the upcoming legislative session that'll start the first of the year. Good opportunity to reconnect. Got a lot of questions from our Memphis friends. They are looking at doing something on a regional transit perspective with the Blue Oval City project. So good information sharing there. Several of us on the staff, and actually a shout out to Jessica as well. We attended a forum that was held by the Greater Nashville Chamber of Commerce releasing their point of departure report. It was an analysis done of the commuting challenges for many of the folks coming out of Nashville public schools, going into higher education, looking at that transportation access questions. Along with a presentation by the author of the report, there was an excellent panel discussion. Jessica participated in that panel discussion on access. And I'm guessing you probably had a little bit of influence that one of the key findings of that report was that Nashville really does need a dedicated funding stream for public transportation. So
I didn't, but I was thrilled. It was both a key finding and a recommendation.
So we're going to keep blowing that horn, Jessica, right? I've attended several meetings over the past month or so with Metro Planning, the mayor's office, and several others regarding the global mall redevelopment process. After months and months and months of being tied up in the East Bank process, it was kind of fun to pivot over to global mall, including the role and location of our planned transit center down in Antioch. Metro Planning is planning to roll out the draft plan to the public over the next month or two. So we're anxious to participate in that process and get that project underway. That one should be the next one in the pipeline following North Nashville. As we mentioned last month in June, we did a candidate briefing for our mayoral and council candidates on, what WeGo does and the role of public transportation in the community. We had tremendous turnout as an outgrowth of that session. We've had a number of follow-up conversations with various both mayoral and council campaigns on specific initiatives and questions and what have you. So I certainly consider that to be a positive. I was delighted, pleased to not participate, but at least attend Metro Council's Rules and Nominations Committee and the full council where Catherine was appointed. So again, I want to join everyone, Catherine, in welcoming you, telling you no need to drink from the hot fire hose. We can dribble it out a little bit at a time, and we're anxious to get you oriented to the system, hopefully take you on some facility tours and see some of the fun and scary stuff, that we'll be dealing with in the next few months. Always like to keep you updated on what's going on the Regional Transportation Authority side. Hatch Consulting is continuing their work on our STAR Future Vision Study. So basically looking at the WeGo STAR commuter train to see how we might be able to more optimally use it to benefit the region. This week they were doing a number of public meetings throughout both Nashville and Mount Juliet and in Lebanon, and they're getting very good turnout. So I think as they go into scenario development, we'll see some interesting things develop. We're continuing to advance work on our negotiations for joint development at Donaldson Station with a development team made up of H.G. Hill and Southeast Venture. We got our appraisal back last month, and we're starting to do some engineering analysis and working with our attorneys and our real estate advisors on looking at the terms we would put in a term sheet. And our development group's been working toward land acquisition for a new park and ride in Murfreesboro, have a parcel identified, been going through the appraisal process and through the environmental review process with Federal Transit Administration. Finally, not quite ready for announcement yet, but want to again thank folks like Katie and the people in service development. We are in excellent conversations with Nashville SC soccer team to do some pilot connector services from the Murfreesboro Antioch corridor into some of the games at Geodis Park toward the tail end of this season, with an eye toward a learning experience so that we might do a more full connection system next year. So unless there are any questions, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Does anybody have any questions for Steve? I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't take questions from the floor. It's just the time for the board to speak at this time. But thank you.
I have one question, which is, they've taken away the bridge on Broadway. How is that impacting our service?
Katie, would you like to step in?
There is no bridge there now.
I could summarize quickly, but it's not helping.
Yeah. It's a 2-month thing, right?
Yeah, it's definitely causing disruptions and delays. And we've had to work with NDOT and TDOT to sort of finagle transfer locations and other deployments. But like everyone else, I guess we're adapting.
To get through.
Keep it clean, Katie. Anything?
Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you.
We are glad they took, even though it might be more disruptive short term, that they took the let's get it done faster approach as opposed to stretching it out for months and months and months.
Anything else? September, I hear. It should be done. It's going to look nice. It's going to be great. First again, I want to welcome you again, Catherine, to our board. And Steve, thank you for shepherding everything through council. And I want to echo your sentiments, Janet, thanking Metro Council for increasing our dollars. It's going to make such a difference for our ridership and for so many, and for those young people attending James Lawson High School, just an added bonus. So thank you very much, Council. So we appreciate the support. Steve, you stole a little bit of my thunder, so let me see if I can't. I was at the Rip Patton North Nashville Center the other day for the community lunch, and what a moment to see how far. I would sort of urge all of you to drive by there. I drove by maybe 3 weeks ago, and it just looked like, wait, what are we doing here? And then I went the other day, and it was like, it's awesome, and it feels so real. And the other thing that felt so real was the community so engaged and so excited about the center coming and how it's going to impact the community. I think it's going to also impact some of your work, Katie, and how ridership comes together better. And so it's just it was very exciting to sort of be over there the other day. I too got to sit on a panel with Jessica. So just not you, Steve. We're just getting to hang out on panels these days, but it was great. We sat on a panel with the Rotary, and thank you for being there, Margaret. And I know Walter was watching online. So, but it was a good opportunity to talk about what's happening in transit and the impetus for our community to know and to understand about what we're doing here. And today's conversation as it relates to budget and Felix's report with slides, with Deers. Those visuals and those conversations make a difference. And I think how we go about sharing it with the community will give the community better knowledge. So as we think about budgets next year, and we think about dedicated funding, and when we talk about it with the knowledge of the expertise that actually sits in this room. And works here to make certain that our transit continues to expand itself and continues to be accessible for all. And I love how we certainly use what the federal government gave us as it relates to equity, but I like how you take it further than that, Felix. And I appreciate that your analysis goes deep, and you make it very unique to the Nashville community, which you should, but you do it with such great excellence and such intentionality, and I appreciate that you do that. So thank you for doing that. To this, I'm going to pretty much push over to Margaret because Margaret's got some things for us today. But that concludes my report unless anyone has any questions. But good job, everybody. We got a budget. This is awesome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What a great year this board has had. And it is an honor to serve as your secretary and general counsel. The board is a voluntary board, as those of us in the room know, and you give so much service and thought and excitement and energy about MTA to the community, and I want to thank you all for your service. It's this time of the year when we elect officers. We do it in July of every year. Currently serving Gail Carr-Williams as our chair and Janet Miller as our vice chair. And particularly thanks to both of you all for your leadership. It's extraordinary, really. Thank you. So I am the designated person to take nominations for next year's officers. And so does anyone here want to make a nomination?
I would like to nominate some folks for TA board officer, if I may. I would love to nominate Gail Carr-Williams to continue on as chair and Janet Miller to continue on as vice chair.
I have on good authority that they are willing to serve again, which was the big question, and that they are. Thank goodness.
That's good.
And we can take that motion for both positions if we want. So is there a second to that motion?
Second.
So properly second. So are there any other nominations? If not, I'll close the nominations. And so I will now ask the board members to vote. So starting with you, Jessica Dobbin, Catherine Satzer, Walter Searcy, all right, Gail Carr-Williams, and Janet Miller. So let's thank Gail and Janet for saying yes. Well, thank you so much. So the other thing that we do once a year is that we have an ethics presentation. And this I call the Marion Ott Ethics Presentation. A former board member and also employee of MTA, really dedicated transit advocate. And so she instituted this as a board member. So it's been going on for several years where we look at ethics. And also want to remind those in the audience, employees, that these ethics rules also apply to you. So it's just not the board members. And so I always think that's a good thing about this presentation, that we're all here listening to what these ethical considerations are. So I passed out this handout to the board members for y'all to look at. Part of that, what I have in the handout, is actually in the materials. And what is in the materials is our ethics policy that was passed by the board in 2007 as a result of a state legislative mandate for every municipality and an agency of a municipality to have an ethics policy. So we, the MTA board, enacted the model policy. So what you are seeing here is what was proposed by the legislature as a model policy that's been retrofitted to put our agency's name. So you see on the first page what the goals of the presentation are. And if you turn to the second page, I'll take you through these these various goals and go through it fairly quickly, but don't wait. If you have a question, just call out. Don't wait for me to say any questions. Just, interrupt. So important, and I think a lot of this is so basic, but it's just important to be reminded that you cannot accept benefits related to the board as your, a board member, and you can't use information that you have here for your own personal and financial gain. And so you shall not accept or solicit any benefit that might reasonably tend to influence you to act improperly. You cannot use Nashville MTA property, services, or funds for personal purposes, and you cannot use non-public Nashville MTA information for personal gain or for the gain of any family member or other employee. And I will show you when we go through the policy quickly how family member is defined in case you have any question about that. So if you feel you have a bias or think you have a conflict, you need to disclose this conflict and determine whether or not to recuse yourself. And you have a duty to be independent, and that means you can't do anything based on your own self-interest or based on a bias you have or against or in favor of some particular person that you know personally, or based on the interest of the director or contractors with whom your board interacts. So you must be impartial. This, of course, is obvious, but it's good to remember it, and act based upon the law and the facts that are before you. But if you have a potential conflict, should you recuse yourself? And those are, you see the bullet points. Yes, if you are biased based on a personal interest, where you would gain or lose money in some way from the decision, or you are biased or prejudiced or against a party, either as an individual or as a member of a group. You may be close personal friends with someone and you really can't objectively really make a decision. Or you cannot act fairly or impartially weigh the evidence because you're just prejudiced about whatever the issue is, okay? But know if you won't gain or lose money fairly directly from the decision, and if you do think you can be objective and impartial, even given a bias, then you don't have to recuse yourself. Now, most people just do, okay? They just say, here is the, I have this conflict, so I'm not going to vote. And that's, people usually feel just more comfortable in doing that. And I get calls from time to time when people see something on the agenda and they want to talk it through. So if something like that happens, you don't have to wait till the board meeting. If you'd like to talk through your decision with me, I'm here to do that. But if you have a conflict, you do need to say why. You can't say, I have a conflict. Mm-hmm. I mean, you do have to say what's the basis of your conflict. Okay, you can't just say, not voting, I'm going to have a conflict. That's not what you can do. All right, you have to tell the board what the conflict is. So the procedure, we also have in our ethics policy, which is required by state law, a procedure for how you file an ethics complaint if you have one against someone. And without going into a lot of discussion, because I don't believe I've ever had an ethics investigation complaint come before, and I'm the person to whom it comes. And I can investigate it, or the board can decide someone else investigates, or I can think that I'm not the right person. We need someone who's independent to do that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time about that, but I do want you to know there is a process, and the process is what is set out in state law, and that's what we've adopted. All right. Now, the sometimes more complicated issues, and that's the Open Meetings Act. So that act on Tennessee state law, excuse me, prohibits deliberation outside board meetings. And the Public Records Act makes almost all your emails open to the public. So you should absolutely, and I know you all know this, we talked about this.
Margaret will remind you many times, Catherine, through the year.
Yes, you should absolutely, notice I really decided to underline that, absolutely avoid the use of email to discuss board issues or to invite comments from other members concerning any public meeting business. So you will see me, or I will ask individually, if you want to ask somebody something individually, or Steve, will give out a general notice, and then sometimes you might see me go, do not reply. This is just for you to know. But that doesn't happen very much anymore. But what I'm saying is, I don't want you to discuss back and forth public business, because you might be deliberating, because deliberating is 2 or more board members who are deliberating toward making a decision. So that's what you have to be really careful about. And if you violate the open meetings law and you're not doing it like this, like a meeting like this that's been noticed to the public, and we're all here for everybody to hear how we deliberate or what we're thinking about or what the decisions are to be made. If that happens and you've made a decision outside of the Open Meetings Act, it's void. It could very well mean that it's void. So, in other words, that means it's a decision that later is not a real action of the board. So what is a meeting? So a meeting is when 2 or more members of a governing body with authority to make decisions for or recommendations to a public body like MTA meet and make a decision or deliberate toward a decision. Because adequate notice must be given to the public before you make your decision. And notice informs affected parties of their opportunity to be heard on this decision. We have public comments at the beginning of the meeting, because we've noticed it up. If somebody wants to say something that you're deliberating on, they have an opportunity to do that. And so it's not a meeting. So when Steve and Gail and Janet go to an on-site inspection over at North Nashville, that's not a meeting. That's an example there. Or a chance meeting or informal meeting. As long as they are not over there, Gail and Janet. Okay, look, let's talk about what's going to happen at the next board meeting. What's your thought? That's deliberating toward a decision. And then there are really limited circumstances where the board can go into executive session to talk with the attorney that is not a public meeting, but it has to be done a certain way. And then when you're actually, there is a lawsuit, and you're going to actually make a decision about what to do about the lawsuit, you have to go back into public meeting and talk about that. So you can't, all you can do is kind of ask legal questions, but you can't make a decision.
Has that ever happened, Margaret?
We haven't had any litigation in a long time, and I don't think it was with you. So you've been here since 2014. So we have had an executive session before that time. So we've actually utilized this exception, but not in over a decade.
Seems so long when she said a decade.
Well,
That's very good that we have not had to do this. That's awesome.
And I also want to tell you that even though you don't have Nashville.gov emails, you have your own personal emails, they can be subject to, if there was a lawsuit, and also a public records request if you are deliberating or you're part of something, and so just remember that, email could be a public record, your email. Okay. So, and then I have here some best practices for making informed decisions, and MTA does all of this. It has an incredible board agenda. It has a very good, detailed summary about why you're bringing an action to the board. It has the the staff's recommendation. The agency does an incredible job of informing the public what it is doing through its board minutes and through its board action items and agenda. And so these best practices are listed here, but MTA has been doing this for years. And for board members, you do this too. You make sure you understand what's going on. You understand, and you read the board agenda and you're ready and prepared to ask questions and engage. So the board is already engaged in best practices, but keep in mind that is what you are doing and that it's important as you, a board member, to do that. Now, when you're looking at the code of ethics based on the MTAS model, and this is in the board packet, you will see like the definition of personal interest. And I think that helps you know what that means. And if you go on the second page, number 3, up at the top, you will see that employees, spouses, parents, step-parents, grandparents, siblings, children, or stepchildren, that's all encompassed in the definition of family members that you have to consider where conflict of interest might occur. There's always a question about acceptance of gifts and gratuities, and I use this example because if you go to the and I don't know if this is attached, and it's not, but in your materials on the last page, you'll see the Federal Transit Agency's conflict of interest statements, and it tells you that you are to accept no gift of subcontractors or people doing business with the agency. And I used this example last year, and I'll use it again. So I have a contract with MTA because we go out RFP for legal services. So I'm a contractor. So if we go to lunch and I want to pick up your bill, you're going to say, no, Margaret, nope. I'm not accepting anything, any kind of gift from you.
Don't worry, she never offered to pay.
It's an excuse, right? Anyway, but that is, I think, maybe the best example I can give to you all about, anybody who does work with the agency, my best advice for that is just instead of trying to figure out if it's substantial or it might have the appearance of impropriety, all of that's in here. So there are kind of exemption. I mean, there are ways to work around it. The best way to do it is just don't accept anything from anybody who, does work with the agency that might be considered a gift. All right. So nobody interrupted me, but are there any questions? Yeah, you did. Are there any questions? Well, if not, I'm around, as you all know, and part of what I see as my role as board secretary, general counsel, is to answer, because sometimes there are some pretty tough questions, and so please call me if you ever have any. All right.
Well, thank you, Margaret. That was great. And Catherine, I will say that Margaret is always there, just a phone call away whenever you get confused, or even if you're not and you just want to have one question answered. She's great to be there and serves her role here for all of us extremely well. We've been grateful to have her for these many years, right?
This ad that says there are only 2 people at this table who remember, it's you and me sometimes, Gail.
Just you and me. Just you and me, Margaret. It's okay though, but it's an honor to serve. Anybody have any questions for Margaret? Hearing none. Anyone else have any other old business, new business? Hearing none, I will move for adjournment. We are adjourned.
Meeting.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.